Welcome to Contracts in Trivaeo. Contracts are legal instruments or written documents that underwrite and define a relationship between your company and a third-party company or any other entity. The Contracts Manager in Trivaeo has one primary job for you, and that is to alert you and notify you when critical dates associated with your contracts are due to happen. For example, a contract might be expiring in a month's time. It will automatically alert the team associated with that contract so that they can get on the case and begin to renegotiate the contract or arrange for its renewal and so on. So the contracts application in Trivaeo is used as a repository to store contracts against suppliers and contacts. But most importantly, its job is to make sure that you don't miss critical path dates associated with contracts. And it gives you a single library and repository where you can store all relevant associated information about contracts together and logically, and you can even cross-link them. So looking at the contracts application in its own right, by default, you will open into this active linear list view. This is a ordered list of all of the contracts that you have across the system that are not archived. So archiving is a physical intervention that one of your users would make against a contract when it's either been cancelled or it's naturally expired, to move it from this live contracts view, which is active, into an archive view. At any point, you can sort or filter the contracts as you see fit, using standard sorting and filtering nomenclature, which you'll be familiar with now from using it in CRM. And lastly, you could use a hierarchical view, which is the same list view, but this time it shows you contracts that have got associated addendums or subcontracts associated with them, so that you can see what the relationship is between contracts where there is such a relationship to be managed. So back to our active view. To add a contract, you can do so here at the top right of the main contract manager window, or if you click the little plus sign here at the bottom of the contracts application, it will achieve the same aim. So when you first add a contract, whilst on the desk in front of you will be a stack of paperwork or a draft of a contract that you're working on with a supplier, the contracts application first of all needs you to provide the basic outline information where you will later upload a copy of that contract and store it against this high-level information. So to add a new contract, you've got three basic areas. First of all, once you've completed these three basic areas, you will then be able to attach the documentation, add notes, tag your assets and products, and do all sorts of really cool things in further support of the detail for that written paper instrument in its own right. Many of the fields here, when you add a new contract, are driven by dictionaries or lists of standard terms and definitions that your business uses. Your administrator is responsible for setting those up for you down here in the administration area. On the assumption that all of your contacts are up to date, your suppliers are up to date, and you've marked them as a supplier using the radio checkbox in CRM, you will have no problem at all completing this mask. If it's red or rose-colored background, it means it's a mandatory field before you're able to store this record. As you can see, there's 5, 6, 7 fields here are mandatory on the first form, but the more information that you put in here, the better the system can work for you, and the more relevantly the system will work to support your business. Key things here, for example, are who's the owner of this document, who do you want to have alerted when there's a critical path change coming in this document, like its expiration date is due, or there's a notice period that's coming up in association with the planned termination date and the renewal date and so on. So this alerting and notification substrate of contracts management is really the key that brings this alive for you. So you complete this information as much as you can when you first start. You might not have all the information when you first start negotiating a contract, If that's the case, then just use your best guess for what the planned execution date will be, and so on. So complete all three of these basic areas to the best of your ability. It doesn't matter if you don't complete them fully. Only the rose-colored fields are mandatory in any case in order to create a new contract instrument. And then thirdly, here, products, quite useful. You can cross-link this to your products and services. So their relationship to your suppliers and the contracts that include them is automatically created. Whilst you're in the process of setting up a new contract and maybe negotiating the first few rounds of redlining the paperwork, you might, as a contracts manager, you want to keep this contract closed to anyone else so they can't see it and can't interfere with it until you're ready for them to assist you in the process. Then just mark it as private down here at the bottom left hand side. I'm not going to submit this one here for the purposes of demo. I will open an existing one and show you what happens once you've submitted a contract. So you complete that form, you hit OK, and the contract will appear here in your active list. They are sorted by however you've got this sorted. It could be by dates, or it could be here, as you can see by the contract name. So I'm just going to pick the first one here as an example. What you now notice is the basic information that we entered on those first 2 or 3 form areas when we created this contract has now been extended significantly by all sorts of other useful additions, like the ability to cross-link this contract with another contract that's in the system already. You can link it to the assets that your company uses, either as instruments in delivering that contract or as affected parties of that contract. You can gain access immediately to the contacts associated with the contract and call them or email them. So you're only ever one step away from all the key information you need to manage not only the agreements necessary to secure this contract, but more importantly, as your memory fades and the contract ages, 9 months later when its renewal is due, you're not scurrying around looking for all the information. It will all be here, directly married to the contract instrument itself. Now let's assume, we've been redlining a physical paper contract with a company for a couple of days. It's now at a sufficient maturity level. We can go ahead and we can upload that and add it as a file or any form of attachment. Could be screenshots, could be voice recordings, could be recordings of webinars, anything like that you think is relevant to the history of this contract. You can add it as an attachment. You can make whatever notes you need. You can create checklists and milestones so that things get done, and you can assign tasks against this contract. And you can do other things that are critical to your business and its survivability over the longer term, like noting the penalties and the penalty clauses, service levels, and so on. A really powerful feature, of course, is the ability to link a contract not only to your assets, your employees, and your team as a whole, but projects. So the project team who receive a new project to work on, like building a house, are only ever going to be one click away from the underlying contract. So if the project manager needs to check the contract that is related to this house that they're building, it's one mouse click away for them. They're not shuffling through filing cabinets and looking all over the place to find a copy of the contract and then not sure whether the contract they've got is the latest copy or not. No. As soon as the project is assigned to them and it arrives in their My World, they will be one mouse click away from all of the documentation and history as relevant. So when a contract has reached the end of its natural life and it's not going to be renewed, or it's organically expired, it's to move it out of your live contracts view to the archive view. You just hit this little button up here on the top right. Key hint of the day as it relates to contracts is making sure that you get your alerting and notifications set up correctly so that your team can be automatically notified when a renewal is due, when negotiations should start on a renewal, and that you're not attempting to exercise things against a contract when its expiry date is 2 days around the corner. It's easy to manage contracts when your company's only got 1 or 2 of them live at a time. When you're dealing with 30, it's a bit more challenging. When you've got hundreds, you absolutely will become reliant on the information you provide to the context of alerting and notifications, working to inform you when your legal and contracts facing people need to get on the case to get a contract renewed.